Good morning and welcome to a view from the House, coming to you live from Parliament in Cape Town. I'm Kokeli Tanda. Today we focus on the youth of South Africa. That's because it's Youth Month and Parliament too has dedicated this month to the youth. One of the highlights is June 16 Youth Day celebrations, when the nation remembers the day in 1976 when thousands of school children in Soweto and elsewhere united in protest against the education system of the time. Parliament's own Youth Month activities were launched last Thursday. It was followed by an NCOP debate on youth matters last Friday, while the National Assembly will also have its own youth debate this coming Thursday. Youth activities at Parliament culminate on the Youth Parliament that is to be held next week on Thursday, the 21st of June. We also talk youth matters in our program this morning, and to give us their views on challenges facing the youth and what needs to be done to address those challenges, we are now joined by Mduduzi Manana of the ANC, Geordin Hill-Lewis of the Democratic Alliance, and Liezl Van der Merwe of the Inkatha Freedom Party, all members of Parliament. But before we talk to you, let's listen to this clip from Public Works Minister Thulas Nxesi's address when he introduced the debate on the youth in the National Council of Provinces last Friday.
The situation facing you today is getting worse and something must be done. These are difficult times and painful decisions need to be made. Colleagues, let me open my speech with a quote from Henry Wadsworth. And I quote, "Youth comes but once in lifetime," unquote. I encourage you to take the advantage of the opportunities that present themselves before you. In a lifetime, some things we experience them only once. Colleagues, you would also realize that part of the situation confronting us in dealing with the youth crisis is the number of the different definitions of the term youth which tend to distort the unemployment figures. I'm not here to give the definition, but to emphasize the magnitude of the problem regardless of a definition. If over 50% of the youth in the country is unemployed, or rather have never had a job in the last 5 years, and a large portion of the statistics is reported to be in the rural areas, what does it mean about your future as the young people?
To kickstart our discussion, before we look at specific issues affecting the youth of today, as chairperson of the steering committee looking at the youth parliament, what activities have you planned for this year's youth parliament, Mr. Manana?
Thank you very much, Mkokeli. As you would know, we kickstarted the Youth Month by launching it last Thursday on the 7th. A debate on at the NCOP then ensued, which sought to look at the challenges that are facing young people today, their needs and aspirations in current day South Africa. We will be having a debate in the National Assembly this Thursday on the 14th, wherein we will be discussing amongst ourselves as young members of Parliament on the actual challenges, what needs to be done, how these challenges and programs and initiatives from the young people could be well channeled and streamlined in government programs. But as well, we'll close our Youth Month by hosting the Youth Parliament on the 21st of June, wherein we'll invite all young people from all over the country to come and discuss amongst themselves what it is that could be regarded as solutions to their plight, to their problems, and to their current day challenges. And of course, this time around, we've invited the members of the executive so that young people can interact with the members of the executive, because they are better resourced and they do have the means to implement some of the initiatives.
For the purpose of our discussion, before we look at issues affecting the youth, the process of planning a youth parliament, is it an inclusive process? Does it involve all parties represented in parliament?
It is a multi-party steering committee. We've had challenges this year, of course, wherein we had minimal participation from other parties, and I think it's probably lack of coordination from the side of Parliament, something we'll look at, something I will take up with the presiding officers. But indeed we had as well difficulties because there was an ad hoc committee that was looking at the NYDA processes, which then meant a participation of some of the steering committee members was minimal. But work did proceed as normal, and we are at this point with a fully fledged program that needs to be implemented.
If I may bring you in here, Liezl, are you satisfied with the existing arrangement with regard to arrangements for a youth parliament?
Well, Mkokeli, let me start by saying thank you very much for this opportunity. I agree with the Minister in the clip that you've just shown that the youth of South Africa are facing a crisis. It's a crisis of unemployment, it's a crisis of poverty and disease, which has been exacerbated by an education system which has failed to produce young people with the necessary skills and know-how to enter the job market. And of course, each year through the Youth Parliament, we seek to address these challenges. And unfortunately, the IFP was not invited to this year's launch of the Youth Parliament, which you alluded to happened last week. And unfortunately, from that point of view, I cannot fully say that the process is inclusive. I hope that going forward we'll be able to be included more into the process. But also I'm told that some other political organizations only received their invitations very late on the night before the actual launch of Youth Parliament. And I think that does not bode well for inclusivity.
Geordin, what's your take on the arrangements for the Youth Parliament?
Thanks very much, Mkokeli. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. The Democratic Alliance received the invitation very late on the evening before the launch. It was a great pity. We would have loved to have been there, but with less than 12 or 14 hours notice, there's just no way that we can be there. But not to worry, Mr. Manana has committed to taking that up with Parliament, and we hope he will do so. The DA will nonetheless participate very fully in all of the arrangements going forward over this month. And there's a number of upcoming events and debates in the House, and we look forward to participating fully in those.
Whilst I'm still on you, the Minister says unemployment is undoubtedly the biggest challenge facing the youth of today. What is the situation from where you sit?
Nkokeli, the youth of 1976, who we remember this month, faced enormous challenges of basic rights and freedoms. And they stood up and they tackled those challenges, and they stood up as a generation and fought for their rights. The youth generation of 2012, the big battle they have to fight is unemployment, Nkokeli. The right of every South African and every young South African to have a decent job that puts food on the table and gives them an opportunity to build a better life for themselves and their families. That is the biggest challenge in South Africa today. It really is what politics in South Africa is about.
The Minister said the situation is getting worse. Do you concur with that assessment?
Absolutely, Mkokeli. The situation is getting worse, and unless something is done, we are sitting on a ticking bomb that will explode on all of us unless we come together across the board and address some of the challenges that affect young people, in particular unemployment.
Liezl, according to the Minister, the term youth is being extorted in terms of the number of unemployed. But who then is the youth?
Nkokeli, the youth are young people, and I think, as my colleague just said, it's again time for all of us, all of the young people of South Africa, to rise up with one voice, like the youth of 1976, and forge a new battle, a new revolution against a dismal education system. I think when we talk about unemployment, we must first and foremost also focus on our education system. This education system of ours are failing to empower the youth for the future. It's also failing our nation because it's limiting our developmental opportunities. And therefore, I think now is the time for all of us across the political divide to stand up once more and tell our government, as a youth with one voice, that this education system is failing us. It is lacking the basics. And when you travel throughout the country, when you get to rural areas, you find schools without basic infrastructure. You find children having to walk kilometers for water. Some schools don't have textbooks. Some schools don't have adequate facilities like libraries. And then you also find schools without properly trained teachers, teachers who are committed, teachers who are trained to teach the children. And I think when we look at the issue of unemployment, we cannot take out of the equation this dismal education system which is failing the youth of South Africa today.
We need to hold it there for a moment. We will continue this discussion right after the break. Please don't go away.